Here at Paddy Power, we're the home of the Money Back Special, with some incredible offers every single week. Check out the website or app today. Terms and conditions apply. 18 plus begambleaware.org.
Hello and welcome to this Monday Postcast. I'm Maddie Plell, joined in the studio by Nick Watts. We also have Mark Boylan on the line, as well as Paul Binfield from Paddy Power. Now, we're going to look back at the weekend's action, but there was lots of international flavour to it as well. So as well as the Solario and the Atalanta at Sandown, we're going to take a look at the Grosser Preis von Baden in Germany. And there was also some interesting market moves after some French racing as well. So plenty to mull over. Stick with us before we look a little bit at the midweek races and the Sprint Cup on Saturday. That's the highlight, the Group 1 over 6 furlongs. So Watsy, we'll get straight on into it then. Big news this morning that Gaius is still being supported for the Arc after his really impressive win in that Grosser Preis von Baden. I mean, he's always been a bit of a sort of attractive horse for punters, hasn't he? He's not been seen that much, but every time he seems to take a big step forward. How impressed were you?
Yeah, I think if you win a Group 1 by 14 lengths, you have to be impressed to some degree. You look through the runners that he beat, and it's probably a winnable kind of race. The horse that finished second, I think, finished sixth in the German Oaks last time out. So, probably wasn't a superstar. But I mean, let's look at this positively. I think you can't do anything but that. It was his first run since the Gannet, which seems ages ago now. It was back in the spring. He had been off for all summer. He doesn't strike as being the easiest horse to train. Like you said, he hasn't had many runs in his life, but he has compiled a very good win record. So when he does come out, he gets the job done. And, this is a route that Godolphin have taken in the past to win the Arc, with Marion Bard in 02, won this race and then went on to Longchamp to win. So they've got previous with this. And I would think this horse would be in a different kind of category to Marion Bard, who was something of a surprise winner. He certainly deserves to take his chance. He adds an interesting new dimension to the race. I think most of us, with kind of our, hearts on our sleeves, would like to see Enable do the treble and be a great story for racing. But I also think these kind of races, they should never be gimmies, and the more opposition to her, the better. And the more different elements you've got, the better. So Gareth brings another kind of dimension to the race, and a very exciting one for October. Yeah,
certainly. On looking through the race through a Racing Post ratings perspective, Sam Walker actually rated him higher than Enable, and sort of said in his piece that 16-1 at the time, I'm pretty sure Binners will confirm in a minute that's all gone now. He'd take that every day over, evens or whatever about Enable. I mean, from that sort of viewpoint, do you think he could be? Do you think that's true?
That's the heart and the head argument, isn't it? The heart wants to enable, kind of from an industry perspective, and how brilliant it would be and what an achievement it would be. But if you're looking at it in financial terms and hard cash, then whatever price Enable is around even money doesn't attract many people in terms of. Unless you're a massive hitter, which a lot of us aren't, we might have a little bet on the Arc because it's a big weekend race and have our 5s and 10s on or whatever. You're looking for a bit of value. And Gaiath very much, he might still fit that bill. I don't know what his current odds are. We'll go to Binners now and he'll be able to tell us. But that his kind of odds and his profile would be much more appealing from a head perspective, looking at it from cold, hard, punting logic and profit than Enable would.
Yeah, exactly. And Binners, I mean, as I mentioned, I think he was about 16-1 yesterday after the win, but this morning there's been even more money piling in.
Yeah, exactly right, Maddie. We went 16 immediately afterwards from 33 after a stunning performance. Nick's mentioned about this, but let's not forget that the third Lucario won a German derby and has won all of his starts before that, apart from first time out. So I think you've got to be pretty smart to be a German derby winner by that sort of margin. Anyway, we were pushed. We were forced into 14-1 yesterday evening, and there's been more money since. He's now 12-1. The same price, interestingly, that he is for the Champion Stakes. Champion Stakes later in the season. So that one's 12 from 33. So possibly, and we've seen money for that as well. So possibly he may run over 10 furlongs before the Arc.
Yeah, exactly. That would be a really interesting race for him, wouldn't it? Soft ground, he clearly relishes that, and I don't think 10 furlongs would necessarily be a problem either. Mark, I mean, how impressed were you? Let's go back to the Racing Post ratings angle. higher and unable. What do you think of that as a statement?
Well, to be honest, I'd be lying to you if I said I was fully aware of what he beat. So to give a context of a figure, I'd be plucking it out of thin air. I couldn't tell you. Like as Paul has referred to there, the third obviously is unbeaten this season, coming off the back of a German derby win. So he's obviously no slouch. But in the same breath, this horse he goes very well fresh. Through his career, he's had breaks of 343 days, 197 and 126. He's won off each of them. He bounced out quickly in the month of April, 2 runs in April, and he was beaten in the Ghana. I just worry a little bit that this horse could be very well fresh. And he turns up in the Arc in a very different test. He was allowed to dominate there. Although he took them out of their comfort zone entirely, it was very, very impressive. I'd be highly surprised if he didn't get the same conditions in the Arc. It's just a totally different test. It's chalk and cheese. He's a very, very promising horse, and I really hope that for Godolphin's sake that he remains sound and then they get a clear run with him. I think next year he'd be very exciting if he's still on the scene, hopefully. But for the Arc, I just think it could all be a bit too soon. I think he's better fresh, and I just like to learn more about him. I don't think we have the evidence at the minute on an individual performance and the figures. You can understand the small bit where the lads are coming from there with such a higher rating, but I'm not too sure yet. I need to get greater context to what he's achieved.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think he's still got questions to answer, and although he rates a really, really exciting prospect, the Arc is a whole different kettle of fish for him. A great weekend for Godolphin. Of course, they have Vintager, another horse winning in Germany, but again, looking ahead to the anti-post markets, Moonlight Spirit was cut for the St. Leger after winning in France. And Binners, how impressed were you?
We were pretty impressed, Maddie. We're all looking forward to going up Doncaster in a couple of weeks' time. Great atmosphere up there, possibly a bit more relaxed than some other meetings, and great racing. And Moonlight Spirit, for the world's oldest classic, is now a 16-1 chance from 33s.
Yeah, so a pretty hefty slash then, Watsy. And Moonlight Spirit, he still looks very much a work in progress, but it was over 1 mile and 7, I think, he won over the weekend. Would he be on your St. Leger radar?
He probably wouldn't be top of it, to be honest. It was a great weekend for Godolphin, and he won in fantastic style too. You can't take that away from him. I would question the value of the form. I'm not sure it's the strongest race ever. And he went to Ascot in June. He ran in the Queen's Vase and he was 17-2 to win that and finished 4th. And that kind of put it into a bit of context that, yeah, he won well nicely. He won, in good style yesterday, but I'm not sure the value of the form is absolute, really. And, the fact that he could only finish 4th in the Queen's Vase. Aidan O'Brien had one in that called Barbados, who finished 2nd. And I don't think Barbados is anywhere near his kind of thought process as being his top horse for Doncaster. So, the very fact that, Binners has just said they've cut it into 16-1, so he's still at a 16-1 shot for the Leger, and that's about the chance I would give him. I think that's probably about right. I think there's others with more pressing claims, possibly an Il Paradiso.
Logician, of course.
Logician, if he goes, absolutely, which, we're still not sure about yet. I'm still not sure about in my own mind. And I'm sure Aidan O'Brien will bring it over 2 or 3 others as well. So, good win. Hats off to him, but he's not top of my list for the Leger at this moment.
Okay, let's get back to the action at Sandown then. We had the Solario Stakes won by Positive. Mark, what did you think? I mean, personally, I was quite disappointed. I was expecting a bit more. Maybe I'm just bitter because I was a Kamiko backer and I thought I had him for a minute there. But I was a bit sort of deflated afterwards.
Yeah, workmanlike. I think he's still more than a work in progress. You're talking about the horse in France. I think this fella is a work in progress too. Good ride from Adam Kirby. But, I just think that the scenario that the race developed into, I think will benefit the horse hugely. I'd say Connections, if they had to get a race that he'd learn loads, I think the way it unfolded will leave them a far better horse to come for the future. I don't know if he wants to go a whole pile further than 7 furlongs, albeit he was battling away. He might get a mile at the end of the season, but I'd be keen to kind of keep him to 7. Look, I'm not too sure. I wouldn't be jumping around the place about this fella for the Guineas next year or anything like that. I think it was a good performance, but I'd be with you. I like the runner-up going forward. I like the way he attacked the inside rail there. Kept finishing off really nicely. I think his dam is out of is a half sister to Kingsbarns, a horse that I had a bit of time for, albeit he was ultimately a little bit disappointing, I suppose, the way his career panned out. But I had a good time for this runner up going forward with a view to next year. But I just think now that the winner, he's still probably a little bit on the weak side, but he's going the right way. maybe just 7 furlongs for now. Wouldn't be jumping around about him for a classic point of view next year.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, Clive Cox certainly seems to agree with that. Sort of, again, we're saying this work in progress, and he's more of a 3-year-old by Dutch Art. Binners, what price for the guineas? Did you trim him at all?
We inserted him into the market, Maddie. We put him in at 33 to 1, which seems to sum up what you and Mark just said. Great to see Clive Cox winning these big races. Looks like he's got an exciting team of 2-year-olds. But to be honest with you, 33 to 1 seems right. He's got beaten by Pinatubo before that. Can he turn the form around with that? We don't think so, and it didn't have any effect on Pinatubo's price at the head of the market at 3 to 1.
Yeah, as you say, Watsy, maybe Pinatubo isn't the biggest. This fella's got a bit more size and scope about him, but ultimately I think 33 to 1's fair.
Yeah, I think so. I feel a little bit sorry for the horse because coming into the race, we're probably all looking at the Solario through the prism of previous winners and hoping there would be a superstar come out of it. Ravens.
You think it was that strong a renewal?
No, I don't know. But I mean, that's not to denigrate the horse. Adam Kirby said afterwards he's much more streetwise than he was at Goodwood, so he's very much learning his job at the moment. And yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be on my radar for Newmarket next spring. But he could be one that Clive Cox ventures into Europe and maybe looks at a German Guineas or a French Guineas, something like that. It might, allow him to kind of work his way into the 3-year-old division without blitzing him at Newmarket early on, and that might be a better avenue for him ultimately than taking in the Newmarket Classic, which comes so early in the season. Yeah,
interesting that. I like your theory. The other big race at Sandown on Saturday was, of course, the Atalanta Stakes with a short price favourite in Jubiloso, who was unlucky at Glorious Goodwood, but she was beaten out of sight, and the winner was the impressive Lavender's Blue, last in the Oaks last time, but really lightly raced progressive filly Watsy, and I thought she won really easily after getting through that small gap.
Did really well, yeah. Real credit to her and to Amanda Perrott for getting her back after the Oaks.
It's not always easy, is it? With a big race like that, they're built up and up to it, and then next.
Yeah, I mean, there was legitimate reasons for them to go for the Oaks. She was very impressive early in the season. She won a Newmarket Maiden over a mile, I think. Won very nicely, and then ran very well at Newbury, so kind of earned her ticket. But she was one of those horses that, that test came too soon for her. And, Perrott has admitted that afterwards. You roll the dice, you give it a go, didn't work out. She's had to have a bit of time off. So to come back in trip as well. She went out to a mile and 4 in the Oaks. Probably didn't stay, pulled a bit hard, back to a mile, which was the distance she started off at Newmarket. And she's got a really, really good turn of foot. And I think the Sun Chariot at Newmarket is maybe the plan for her. I think Amanda Perrott's got a good horse here, and I think, I wouldn't underestimate Lavender's Blue at all. That was a good return, and, hats off to her for coming back after that disappointment and putting it all together and picking up where she left off in the spring.
Yeah, we mentioned that the top sort of fillies, Star Catcher, John Gosden's got loads of them, Anna Perner, but below that sort of elite level, it's a bit of a muddling sort of group of fillies, I think, even with the older ones as well. So maybe she could take advantage of that in the Sun Chariot. Binners, what price is she for that target now?
Well, Lavender's Blue, the performance forced us to price up Sun Chariot, and we put her in at 5 to 1, along with some nice horses on the same mark, Magical, Voracious and Hermosa, and we put Lawrence in as 5 to 2 favourites. So the Sun Chariot is shaping up to be a nice renewal. It's great to see Amanda with a nice horse again. I think it was a man who I used to back all the time, and good luck to Amanda with Lavender's Blue.
Indeed, yeah. Mark, I mean, as I've said, it's a bit of a funny division, but you couldn't have been anything but impressed by Lavender's Blue.
Very, very much so. I went into the race expecting a big performance in Jubiloso, a filly that I thought she was a superstar when she won her maiden. And I don't know, just she hasn't kicked on. But the only thing is she's in the right hands, Jubiloso, to get back and to develop into the sort of horse I thought she could be.
She didn't seem to have many excuses, did she, on Saturday?
No, maybe it's all just happened a little bit quick for her in terms of the progression of her career. Sir Michael is known for giving his horses plenty of time, and maybe she'll benefit from and given more time. But yeah, I was disappointed with her now too, Maddie. But the winner is smart. I don't know if she's Group 1 smart, to be quite honest. I think she's a good solid yardstick. As you mentioned there, there is a bit of a gulf once you step down from the Lawrences of the world down to this sort of territory. I didn't think it was the most exciting race in the world, to be quite honest. But at the same time now, the Sun Chariot, it could develop into a nice race if Lawrence takes her chance. I'd be surprised if Magical went. Now, that's not from any information I've heard or anything, but you just think there could be something for her on Champions Weekend or somewhere else. Maybe it's a good opportunity for her Group 1. I could be wrong. But I'm just looking at it there. I'd fancy Voracious to beat her. I'd fancy Hermosa to beat her. If Watch Me, the French filly, come over, I'd fancy her to beat her. 5-1 to me wouldn't look a good value at all at this stage, to be quite honest.
Okay, honesty is what we like. Now, also good action at Beverley and Chester over the weekend. Judicial won the Beverley Bullet. He loves that course. But Watsy, I want to ask you about a horse that ran at Chester, won the listed race, Vivid Diamond. Franny Norton aboard. He obviously loves the Rudy, had great success there, won the Chester Cup aboard Making Miracles earlier on in the season. But lots of controversy about this ride and whether our rules are okay with the interference he caused round the home bend. What do you think?
Yeah, you could kind of see the incident happening before it actually happened because he was travelling so well in behind. There's 3 or 4 horses in front and he could either go all the way round them, which would have cost him quite a bit of ground. He was just waiting for a gap to open up as they turned into the home straight. It didn't quite materialise. So, to be generous to Franny, he kind of eased his way through at the expense of a couple of other horses. There was kind of a ripple effect and a couple who were probably beaten at the time, but, maybe that's not the point. You think from a safety angle and that kind of stuff, they became unbalanced going around the bend. The horse has gone on to absolutely hose up, one by miles, and very much the best horse in the race. He probably could have gone round them all and still won if he'd wanted to. I looked at the Racing Post analysis of it afterwards because we always have to mention stewards' reports if there is one. So if there's any incident in the race, it will be documented in our analysis, and it was. And the stewards deemed that it was accidental. Again, I think that's being very generous. I'm not sure it was. Franny needed a gap and he made sure he got one. I don't know, maybe...
Do you agree with our rules in Britain? Or, Tom Collins, for instance, he's a big fan of the American racing, and he said without a shadow of a doubt he would have been thrown out. That was the end of back in America. Do you think our rules are right that they favour the winning horse so much?
It's a really difficult one. This is a whole kind of debate all on its own. Maybe they do need a little tweak. He obviously was on the best horse, Franny Norton, but maybe you do have to think again and think, and plot your way around a little bit more rather than kind of. It was a little bit of a barge, wasn't it, to find.
Was it necessary?
It probably wasn't. He probably could have gone round them. Or like I said, it would have cost him a bit of ground, but so well was he going that he probably didn't need to take that course of action. And, it's a small field anyway, so should you find yourself in that position, to begin with, you could argue, and maybe our rules are a little bit too kind of, if something happens in the final furlong, then it's always seized upon and relevant action is taken. But for something around the home turn a little bit earlier in the race, maybe it's kind of in people's minds it's not thought of as relevant or dangerous, and the way that you won the race, they've obviously erred on the side of leniency. But there's no doubt that if there's a rule in place that you do that kind of thing, you're immediately struck out, and you lose the race, then it wouldn't happen. It's the same with the WIT rules as well. If you transgress and you're going to lose the race, you'd make sure you count, wouldn't you? So, like I said, it's a whole debate for maybe we should start having a Sunday forum kind of program and we can bring these kind of things in. But not nice for the horses that got hampered, and luckily nothing bad came out of it. But maybe you shouldn't barge your way through so obviously as that, and I can't really see how that was accidental.
Okay, very, very interesting. Before I go over to Mark to see if he's got any sort of eye catchers from the weekend, what did you think of the rest of the action? As I mentioned, Judicial, Good Birthday was quite impressive back up at Beverley as well.
Good Birthday is quite interesting because he came from the London Gold Cup at Newbury, which is always a traditionally hot race, and Headman won that this year. Forrester Dean was in 4th. I think Good Birthday was in 3rd, so that's working out the treat. I think the Cambridgeshire might be the plan for him, so you'd certainly have him on the radar. Judicial, not grade one, group one standard. He wouldn't trouble the Batashes of this world, but a lovely spot for Judy Camacho, a nice prize to win. Another underrated trainer, similar vein to Amanda Perrott, who we were talking about earlier. When she gets the goods, she can win the races. And Judicial's that lovely kind of group two, group three horse, probably just not good enough to win a group one, but still, great horse to own.
Yeah, maybe the Flying Five could be an option for him next. Mark, I don't know about you, but I had quite an unlucky weekend on the racetrack. I fancied Jumeirah Bridge at Sandown. He had no luck whatsoever. I thought Migration was a good thing at Sandown. I think the jockey just went a little bit too soon on him. Looked like he was going to win. So I think there was plenty of eye catchers for next time out. What do you think?
Yeah, and I was in a similar boat to yourself there. I backed his Marvellous behind Judicial, and just now I haven't really slept a little bit since the last few nights, thinking about the replay in my head. But no, look, that's a horse with a race in it, no doubt. Again, well at home in that sort of company. I thought one that did win nicely and that can go on to bigger and better things is Mogul. Now listen, you wouldn't have to be a genius to see on pedigree and his price tag why he is going to be such a nice horse. But yeah, the vibes around this horse seem to be very, very strong. Just looking forward to seeing him next year. Japan wasn't the finished article, and he still maybe isn't, but I'm just saying, you see the progression he's had through the season from Dante to Judo International, he's transformed. You just get the impression with this fella, the further his career goes on, the better he's going to be. I thought Lopi Fernandez is lovely and professional in the round tower. The runner-up Gilsman now definitely one to keep on. So I thought maybe things just didn't go his way. Now, albeit he's a little bit exposed at this stage, I still think he's a promising horse and just didn't get the rub of the green there on that occasion. But no, for me, juvenile-wise, I'm very taken by Mogul. I think he's going to be lovely going forward.
Yeah. For sure. I'm very glad you mentioned him. And of course, Lopi Fernandez has that Pinatubo form. Be great to see him out again soon. As always, we've mentioned plenty of prices for the anti-post races, whether that be the Arc, the Sun Chariot or anything else. So make sure to use the Racing Post app there to take advantage of all those best offers without having to leave the app. We'll see you just after this break, where we can look at some of the action on Thursday from Haydock and Salisbury.
What's my horse's handicap? The fact that you're backing him? Everyone loves a newbie. That's why Paddy Power Games are giving all new customers 60 free spins on daily jackpot games. New Paddy Power Games customers only, one per customer. T's and C's apply. 18 plus. BeGambleAware.org. Okay, welcome back to this Monday Postcast. As promised, we're now going to look at some of the action midweek. And Thursday, we have a Group 3 at Salisbury. The 340 is the Shadwell Dickpool Filly Stakes over the 6 furlong. Some really interesting entrants here. Summer Romance, I believe she was favourite for the 1,000 guineas at one stage. She's entered up, as well as Nina Ballerina, Good Vibes, Betty's Hope and Dark Lady. All fillies who have shown talent this season. We'll start off then with this one. Anna Nearing won it in 2017. It's not necessarily a playground, as you like, for absolute superstars, but it's produced some really good horses in the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's good to have some midweek action to kind of, group action to call upon, just to break up the week a little bit. So it seems a long way to the Betfred Sprint, no, I don't know if it's Betfred anymore, but the Sprint Cup at Haydock on Saturday. So it's nice to have some good midweek action. This is a really nice race, and like you said, there's some very promising fillies in here. One you didn't mention in your list, which I thought was quite interesting, was William Muir's Final Option, who's just run once, Lethal Force filly, won very, very nicely at Ripon on a debut by 4.5 lengths, really, really strong in the final furlong. Entered in the Cheveley Park later in the season, so he obviously thinks a bit of a William Muir. And if she goes, don't know the final makeup of the field, we won't know that till tomorrow, but if she was to, be in the final runners for Thursday, she would be very interesting for me.
Yeah, one of quite a few who are interesting. Mark, what did you think of this Dickpool Filly Stakes?
Yeah, even just putting my own Irish colours aside, I'm a big fan of the filly Millisle. Looking forward to if she even takes her chance here. I don't know if she does or not, but Jessica Harrington's juveniles, they've had an incredible season. And aside from that, I think keeping these fillies and fillies are particularly strong for this season in the juvenile department. Keeping them apart and finding suitable group race opportunities has been tough for Jessica Harrington. It's a case of like just picking spots where they can fit in, and I just think this could be a nice spot for her. Like, first time out, she absolutely bolted up at Bellewstown. Really, really impressed with how she did it. And then probably had to battle more and had to learn something the second time behind Think Big. And he's a horse I have a lot of time for. Think Big went and finished off really nicely at a decent price behind Alligator Alley in the Roses Stakes since. And this filly then got her turn at the Curragh. Finished off really nicely. And on a part of the track, I thought on the day where it was harder to come from. Just think she's a promising filly going forward. Obviously, as Watsy says there, we'll learn a whole pile more when we see the final field for this. But if she lined up, I'd be interested in her. Just a nice filly going forward.
Yeah, as you say, Jessica Harrington, an absolute embarrassment of riches in the juvenile department at the moment. Binners, me personally, I'm quite interested in Nina Ballerina. I was really impressed with her first time out, where she just looked as if she'd come on for the run and duly bolted up last time. So I'll be keeping an eye on her. What about you?
Well, you mentioned summer romance in your introduction, Maddie. Charlie Appleby enjoyed a beautiful day on Sunday. Winners in every country. Summer romance in the Princess Margaret Keeneland Stakes. Maybe the ground was good to soft. Maybe faster ground is important to her. I know she did win her maiden on soft ground at Yarmouth, but she was good on fast ground after that. And let's not forget, she didn't have a clear run at Ascot either, approaching the final furlong. I think you found a nice spot for her to return to winning ways and possibly reclaim a place at the front of the 1,000 guineas market.
Okay, so Binners is going to give Summer Romance another chance then. Let's have a look at the Haydock race now at 3:50 again on Thursday. It's the Gordon Lord Byron EBF Conditions Stakes, and the great horse himself is entered up here, as well as the likes of Tabarak, Vanbrugh and Mizar. An 11-year-old now, Mark, I feel like it'd be apt to go to you to talk about Gordon Lord Byron, and he just seems to be holding his form so well.
He's just an absolute star, isn't he? I'm so much time for the horse, and his campaign it's been such an honest campaign with him throughout his career. I absolutely have so much time for him. I think even Tom Hogan plucked a stat out there the last time when he ran in the city of York, and it was crazy because all the horses he was competing against, he was born before. He'd won the race in 2012, and he won that race when the rest of them weren't born. Sorry, I've been an arse at telling that story, but he's such a stalwart to have on your side for a year, and he's still holding his form so well. He's been running really well in decent company over here. Now, albeit he was always going to struggle last time in those deeper waters, but he's treated pretty well with the conditions here. I feel kind of crazy, and it's not just sentiment that I'm thinking, you could potentially put up an 11-year-old to beat some smart types here, but if he turns up, and I would expect him to, you'd imagine, considering the race is named after him, I think he'll give a really good account here, and Haydock, a place where he's had magical memories in the past in the Sprint Cup.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to use that sort of stat. 2013, back when he won the Sprint Cup. Was he really impressive that day with that Sprint Cup on Saturday? It would be apt, wouldn't it?
It would be very apt, and he's just a horse you would love to own. I think he cost an absolute pittance from the sales for Tom Hogan. I think it was about £5,000. It might have even been less than that. He's had 102 races in his career, which is extraordinary in itself. There's not many that reached the 100 club. For him to have year in, year out turned up at these races.
He'll be loving it as well.
Loving it, and won quite a few of them as well, and still running well. He's 11 years old now. It's absolutely extraordinary. It's something you've very rarely seen. So it's quite right that they have a race named after him. I think it's due reward for a fantastic career. Certainly wouldn't rule out a win. It'd be very emotional, and it'd be you'd kind of feel a bit half-hearted if you're one of the trainers of the others who beat him half a length into second, or a bit sheepishly going into the winner's enclosure, denying him his moment in the sun. But I think he'll run very well. I think the one who might give him most to do is possibly Tabarak, the Richard Hannon horse, who has very good course form as well. Half the age of Gordon Lord Byron, as probably most of these horses are actually. But he won a listed race over course and distance last season. I think he finished third in the John O'Gaunt as well. So it's obviously a track and the distance that he really excels over. I'm a little bit ageist when it comes to horses. I hold my hands up. Great for Gordon Lord Byron if he did win, but you'd think something like one of these 5-6-year-olds might just have a little bit more, too much toe for him in the final furlong, let's put it like that. But yeah, I certainly wouldn't be disappointed to see Gordon win again.
Yeah. Mark, sorry, you had something to add?
No bother. No, I was just saying, you're talking about how unlikely it was for a career for a developed like this. But this horse started off, pulled up in a Roscommon maiden, off the track for a year, 14-14, beating 44 lengths of the Curragh, and it took him a while to get off the mark. He ends up winning a Dundalk maiden, and to still go on then and win a Group 1 in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia. From such an unlikely start. There's a fantastic documentary that was done about him a couple of years ago. I'd encourage him to seek it out. It's a great watch.
Yeah, I think I heard something from Tom Hogan saying that he fractured his pelvis when he was pulled up in the stalls that time. And the vets had said, we recommend that, you do the kindest thing and you put him down. And he basically took him home and stood him in his box for 12 months and he couldn't barely move. So it really is an extraordinary story. So we wish all connections of Gordon Lord Byron the best on Thursday. Hopefully he'll run. Binners, you're not going to pour cold water on the old boy now. We've had a good old heartfelt chat about him, are you?
I think I will, Maddie. Yeah, listen, there won't be a
Cruel.
dry eye. There won't be a dry eye in the house if he wins, including me. But I tell you what, Dave Simcock will not be sheepish if he walks into the winners' enclosure. Breton Rock, I think, has got a good chance. He hasn't won for a long time, but he's been competing in group races. The last time he ran at this sort of level was in 2014. He's been in Group 2s. They considered him good enough to run in the Lennox Stakes. He ran a respectable race in the Supreme last time behind Soudois. He was mid-division that day, and back in this grade conditions level, I think he's got a marvellous chance of upsetting the story that all you guys post want.
Yeah, you say that, but to be fair to you, Breton Rock is a golden oldie in himself. I do love him. He must be about, 8 or 9 now himself. So we'll let you off. There you go. We'll let you off with that, Binners. Let's move on to Saturday then. We've covered the Haydock Sprint Cup connection with Gordon Lord Byron in the past, and it takes place at 4:15, the Group 1 over 6 furlongs. And 3-year-olds, they've had a good record in it in recent years, and we've got sort of 3 big players in 10 Sovereigns, Advertise and Cardem, all turning up. Binners, just roll us through your prices at the minute.
Well, Maddie, Advertise heads the market at 9 for Bon Viveur. Martin Meady's been brilliant for him recently. Frankie gets on so well with the horse. 10 Sovereigns, the July Cup winner, so impressive that day, 130. Second favourite, Cadem, 9-2 for Charles Hills. Promising horse stepping up to the highest level. Then it's 10-1 Fairyland, 12-1 Dreamer Dreams and Hello Zane, and it's 14-1 Bar.
Yeah, very interesting race, Watsy, with the younger generation sort of holding sway in the market. Start off with 10 Sovereigns. What do you think of his run in the Nunthorpe last time? It was almost a no-show, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a strange one, wasn't it? Never really got involved, never really looked like doing what he did at Newmarket. We were all left, wowed by what he did there in the July Cup. I know it's a different trip, 6 furlongs as opposed to 5, so he needed to be a bit quicker out of the gates. And Brian said he was a bit sleepy in the stalls and kind of didn't really wake up until it was too late. It's a funny excuse to have, really. Maybe it was true. Maybe that's what Ryan Moore came back and told him, and that was the reason. But it just seems strange for a horse who's,
Doesn't seem the most reliable, does it?
No, for a horse that's running the big races that he's had, you'd think he'd be wired and ready to go, and, he'd be fine with the stalls and alert and like you said, ready. But, no, he wasn't no-show. And so you've got a real dilemma now as a punter. Do you take the 10 Sovereigns that we saw at Newmarket, who looked electric and really put the others to the sword and looked very impressive? Or do you take the horse either side of that? Ascot, he was only 4th in the Commonwealth Cup, and then obviously the Nunthorpe we already talked about. So it's a real kind of decision you've got to make, whether to give him another chance or whether to swerve him. Personally, I think it's quite a deep race. I think there's some really interesting horses here. You said 3-year-olds hold sway. 4 out of the last 5 years it's gone to a 3-year-old. There's one Binner's mentioned at 12-1, which I think is quite interesting, called Hello Zane. He's got a very interesting course form. He won the Sandy Lane earlier in the season. Now, Calix was 13-2 to win that day. Obviously disappointed and subsequently retired because found out that he was injured. So you have to treat it with a little bit of caution. But then you look back to the 3rd was Royal Intervention, who's gone on to be a very good horse since for Ed Walker. Won a Group 2 in Germany recently. So there is kind of merit in the form, even if Calix was under par or injured through that race. And he's run at Haydock last season. He finished a good second, very early on in his career. So 2 good course runs there. He handles all kinds of ground. Won a Group 2 in France at the back end of last season on soft ground, but he handles it quicker too. And didn't run badly at all at Ascot in the Commonwealth Cup. He kind of blew the start a little bit, but finished on the heels of Advertise in 3rd. Not a bad run at all. So I think going back to Haydock again, which was obviously his kind of best performance to date. He doesn't mind what the weather will do this week. If it's a showery, if it's a bit on the soft side, he'll be fine with that. And I think double-figure prices about him. I think he's a really good each-way option. So I'd be much more interested in him at 12-1 than I would be loading up on 10 Sovereigns, with the kind of not knowing which way to take him.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a each way fancy in the race myself, but I'll keep my powder dry just for a minute or two. Mark, before we get your selection, Advertise, he's a horse that I really struggle to warm to. I'm not sure why, but he's been really consistent this season and he just seems to run his race every time.
Yeah, I'm in similar terms to you. I don't know. He's not a horse that, on a personal enjoyment level, that I've ever had a huge connection to. But he keeps winning. You have to be hugely impressed by what he's able to do. Loads of talent, and fair play to Martin Mead. He's really weathered the storm with this fella. He's done a fantastic job. When you can see the start of the season he had. Yeah, for me here, 10 Sovereigns. I'm just a little bit concerned. Like a horse I have great time for, but just. I think that the mental side of things that Unthorpe will have done to him, it was just an insane pace. Like Patash's broke the track record on the day, and just he seemed in the early stages like it was alien to him, I thought. And then Ryan had to rush him up to get him understanding the pace that he had to go, and he gassed. He couldn't continue it. And I just worry it's not that long ago since the Unthorpe, and I'd be a little bit concerned. I think 6 furlongs is definitely going to suit him better. Albeit that we've heard the reports from Ballydoyle, obviously he's clocked X amount of furlongs in spectacular times. I just think he's more comfortable at 6 for the time being, but he'd have to be mentally rock solid. I know it is something that was noted before the Commonwealth Cup that he was quite relaxed, and maybe he is going to be able to get over that quickly. But for me, I would have concerns, and I wouldn't like to be getting involved in him today. I think Dream of Dreams is the one that's a bit of value here. Just he had ran, I think, in April, May, June, July, and just that last run in the July Cup behind 10 Sovereigns, it wasn't his true run. It was clear that he was well below his best. And given him 8 weeks off since, I could just see Sir Michael Stoute producing a nice performance, and getting him back. I'd give a shout to So Perfect. That was a cracking run in the Unthorpe now. A filly that's hard to put her up as a win proposition, but I could see her run well at a price. But for me, Dream of Dreams is probably the one to be with.
Okay, one we've not mentioned what's here I want to touch on, I'm sure many people will be, is Cardem, the Stewards Cup winner for Charlie Hills. Obviously, the trainer's had a blistering time of things of late with Batash and other sprint successes. How do you analyse this fella's chance?
Well, he tried something similar a few years ago, Charlie Hills, didn't he, with Magical Memory, I think.
Very similar horse, I think.
Yeah, it came from the, a stunning win in the Stewards Cup and almost bridged the divide into Group 1 company. Magical Memory wasn't far away at all. Yeah, I mean, there's not much not to like about Cardem. I thought the way he travelled through that race in the Stewards Cup, he travelled like a group horse. He was always looked in control. Your eye was drawn to him all the way through the race, travelling really, really easily, and he put it to bed really comfortably. And, had a couple of kind of false steps earlier in the season, but he certainly put it all together last time. Confidence will be high after that. And it's funny with Charlie Hills, isn't it? I'm sure he can train all different types of horses, but he's becoming, like you said, best known for his sprinters, and they all just seem to come along in the line. He seems to get one every season or one every couple of seasons, and an embarrassment of riches, obviously, this year. And Cardem's kind of, he's certainly nowhere near Batash at the moment, but I think he can hold his own in group company, so I would make him a danger. Yeah, I mean, every reason to go for the race and give it a go and see how he gets on.
Yeah, it's good. It's quite a deep race, isn't it, this year? I'll give my couple of thoughts on it now. I must admit, before I came into the studio, I did place a quick bet, and that was on the German horse, Walfad, 16-1. I think he's a really good each-way shot. I think he gave Cardem £8 when he beat him at Newbury, and the Tin Man was back in way behind him. He gave him £3 and a really easy beating as well. You mentioned Royal Intervention won the Group 2 in Germany last time. Walfad was actually behind her, but I think we can sort of let him off there, and I'm really interested in him. I think he won the sort of race at Newbury where he's bound to be underestimated because he doesn't come from these shores, but if you like Cardem, then you really have to fancy this fella at a cracking each way price, I think. Binners, what do you reckon?
Well, I think Mark may be right with Dream of Dreams. I think he was very badly drawn in the July Cup, drawn 1. Give him another chance, but I'm going to go for another one who ran in the July Cup each way. I think she's a big price at 10 to 1, Fairyland. When she was beaten by 10 Sovereigns in the July Cup, she was 12 of 12 that day. Advertised was drawn 8. Fairyland was finished first of her group. I don't think 5 furlongs in the Nunthorpe is really her trip. I think she's a 6 furlong filly. She's had 6 starts over 6 furlongs, 1-4, including the top class Cheveley Park. I've already said she was badly drawn in the July Cup, but it was the same story when she was beaten over 6 before in the Albany by Main Edition and La Pelosa. She was drawn high. They were drawn high. She came out stall 5 and was first to 9. I think she's got really solid in what you've already described as a very, very deep Group 1, and you wouldn't be surprised if any of them won.
Yeah, exactly. Really nicely summed up there, Binners. If any of you are wanting to get ahead on your weekend form study, then you must join our members club at Racing Post. It means you get all of our premium content, including tips, replays, everything you need. So make sure to get involved there. And we'll have a look at some of the other midweek action just after this final break.
Check out Paddy's Rewards Club. Simply place 5 bets of £10 or more across any sport in a week, and you'll get a free £10 bet then next week. T&Cs apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.
Welcome back to this final instalment of the Monday Postcast. We're going to look ahead to some of the racing this week. Now, we've covered Haydock and Salisbury on Thursday, but we also have action at Catterick, Goodwood, Salisbury and Kempton. That's tomorrow. Wednesday is Southall, Uttoxeter, Bath, Goran, Hamilton, Chelmsford. Thursday we've got Sedgefield, Lingfield, Clonmel and Chelmsford, as well as those 2 meetings I mentioned already. And Friday is Newcastle, Haydock, Ascot, Musselburgh and Kempton. Let's get a next best this week from you, Mark.
Yeah, I like Hannon in the 5:05 at Goran on Wednesday. John McConnell trained horse, very smart hurdler, juvenile last year. Second to Chosen Mate in an ace grade 2, ran very close before trying the Triumph. But he's had a couple of nice runs in the flat. I think he was second at Leopardstown to quote. Thought it was a really nice run. 131 rated hurdler, taking on what looks to be a good opportunity at Goran, all been well in the 5:05. So for me, Hannon looks very, very solid.
I like the sound of that a lot. I was a big fan of him as a juvenile hurdler, and he did strike me as a sort of flat horse. Binners, you have a next best as well?
Yeah, I've got one at, I thought he was going to run at Savile on Wednesday, Maddie, in the 140, a 3-mile handicap chase. It's a horse called Download the App of David Bridgewater's. Brendan Powell's docked up there, but he has now got an entry on Sunday at Fontwell instead. So wherever he turns up, if he runs at Savile, he's stepping up in trip, but I'm not worried about that. He was second over 3.25 miles last season. He's in rattling good form, and I think can complete a hat-trick for Bridgie.
Okay, we'll get the naps now.
This will not be beaten.
No next best from you this week, so who's the nap?
Yeah, I'm going to Ascot on Friday. I think it's a 340. It's a fillies handicap. Sylvester Kirk's got one in there called Bubble and Squeak. Got a very strong course form. I think that's important at Ascot. Won over course and distance earlier in the season. And she's only £3 higher now, and a good run in a listed race in France last time. So Bubble and Squeak off a mark of 90. I think it's the 340 at Ascot on Friday for Sylvester Kirk. I think it's got a very good chance.
Yeah, fantastic. Binners?
I'm going north to Hamilton on Wednesday evening, Maddie, 6 o'clock. The mile 3 furlong handicap. A horse called Carbon Dating, trained by Kilkenny-based Andrew Hughes. This horse has found 1 too good at the same track the last 2 times. His turn will come. I think it could well be this Wednesday. He's on a handicap mark of 70. I think he's very well handicapped. He started the season off 81, and hopefully Andrew Hughes can have his day in the closure.
Brilliant, thanks, Binners. And Mark, finally.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Goran again, 4:35, so half an hour before Hannon hopefully does the business as well. I think Major Reward has a huge chance at Goran. Look, a horse who has to be better than his mark of 80. Has joined Gerlines 2 starts ago. Ran well at Limerick, but just the way the race panned out, he was positioned towards the rear when it paid to be handy. One got an easy lead, and that was over 7 furlongs, which is plenty sharp for him. Then went on, he looked a little bit tap per toe over a mile at Naas, but he's still on the same mark. He was second that day, a really good run, up to 1 mile, extended 1 mile. And geez, I think he's just crying out for it. So for me, I'd be very disappointed if Major Award doesn't prove to be better than a mark of 80. He's 6 weeks off, but hopefully that doesn't count against him. And 4:35 at Goran Wednesday, Major Award.
Thanks very much, Mark. Confidence from the team there, so make sure you have a look at how their naps get on this week. That's all we've got time for today. As always, please rate, review and subscribe, and our ever-present team will be back on Friday to cover the weekend's cards, so don't miss that. We'll see you soon.
Paddy Power Games has over 250 of your favourites to play online, and we're going to attempt to name them all in this 10-second ad before the T's and C's kick in. There's Blackjack, 18+, BeGambleAware.org.